Under the golden glow of the chandelier at Le Jardin, the clink of crystal glasses and soft murmur of conversation painted a picture of wealth and exclusivity. At a secluded corner table, Veronica Hale, the formidable business magnate known for her icy poise, swirled a glass of vintage wine between manicured fingers. Across the velvet rope that separated the elite from the unseen, a man in a janitor's uniform stood motionless, a mop leaning against the wall behind him. His name was Daniel Cross, and unlike most who crossed her path, his gaze held neither fear nor flattery, only quiet resolve. "I'm not here for your money," Daniel said, his voice steady, almost disarmingly calm. "I want to help you walk again." The words seemed to hang in the air, absurd and impossible, like a challenge to the very reality Veronica had crafted for herself over the last 5 years in her wheelchair. A sharp laugh escaped her lips, the kind reserved for someone she considered hopelessly knave. "You're a janitor," she scoffed. "Do you perform spinal miracles with bleach and floor wax now?" But Daniel didn't flinch. "No," he said, stepping closer. "I offer something your doctors haven't. Perspective." Something in his tone unsettled her. This was no beggar, no opportunist. He spoke as if he knew something she didn't, as if he had already seen a truth she had spent years refusing to face. And though she wouldn't admit it, not to him, not to herself, Veronica felt the faintest tremor in her chest. It wasn't anger. It was the terrifying whisper of hope. Veronica's fingers hovered over the small silver call button on the edge of the table, the one that would summon her personal maitre d'. Her lips curled into a smirk, a silent warning for Daniel to leave while he still had the chance. But before she could press it, his voice cut through the soft hum of the dining room. "You pretend not to feel your legs," he said quietly, "but they move when you're angry. Just now, your left foot flinched when I mentioned walking again." The remark froze her in place. For 5 years, Veronica had perfected the art of stillness, of making her chair an extension of her power. No doctor, no therapist, no so-called friend had ever dared to confront her like this. "You're overstepping," she said, her voice cold but thinner than she wanted it to be. Daniel didn't waver. "I've cleaned this floor 3 nights a week for 8 months. I've seen more of you than your mirrors will ever admit." Her eyes narrowed, but something in his tone, calm, unflinching, made her lean back slightly. "And what exactly do you want in return for this generosity?" "Nothing," he said simply. "I already paid my price." He placed a plain white card on the table, his name and number printed in modest black letters. "If you ever decide to stop pretending, call me. I'll be here until the end of the month." As he turned to leave, Veronica's instinct was to dismiss him with a cutting remark, but the words never came. Instead, she found her gaze drifting to the card, the edges catching the candlelight. She told herself she'd throw it away, but later that night when her driver wheeled her into her penthouse, she discovered it in her coat pocket, though she had no memory of putting it there. And for the first time in years, she didn't feel entirely in control of her own story. The wind slipped through the cracked kitchen window of Daniel's small apartment, carrying the scent of rain and distant chimney smoke. He leaned against the counter, a chipped mug of tea warming his hands, while his 7-year-old daughter Lily sat at the table coloring with quiet focus. "You're late tonight," she said without looking up. "Got caught in a conversation," Daniel replied, taking a sip. "With that lady again?" Lily asked, her voice curious but calm. When he didn't answer right away, she lifted her gaze, eyes wise beyond her years. "She's sad," she said simply. "I saw her last week. She looks like she forgot how to smile." Daniel's hand stilled around the mug. "Some people carry heavy things you can't see, kiddo," he said softly. "Like Mommy." He nodded, a flickers of pain in his eyes. 4 years ago, his wife Claire, a battlefield nurse, had been shattered by loss after a miscarriage. One morning, she woke, claiming her legs wouldn't move. Doctors diagnosed conversion disorder paralysis without a physical cause. While specialists shrugged, Daniel refused to give up. Through patience, persistence, and small victories, Claire learned to stand again. 6 months later, she left for a volunteer mission in Haiti and never came back. That loss left Daniel with two things: a daughter who carried her mother's quiet wisdom and a conviction that some wounds didn't bleed but still needed healing. At the same time, in her pristine glass and steel penthouse, Veronica sat in silence, her eyes fixed on the plain white card now resting on her desk. She told herself it was a ridiculous proposition, that a janitor couldn't give her what the most expensive doctors couldn't. Yet Daniel's words echoed in her mind, unsettling her more than she cared to admit. You pretend not to feel your legs, but they move. But they. It wasn't just the observation that rattled her. It was the way he'd said it, not with pity, but with certainty, as if he had already seen her take her first step. 2 days later, Daniel was pushing his mop bucket across the polished marble floor of La Lumiere when the maitre d' approached, looking uneasy. "There's a request," he said. "From the woman in the VIP room. She asked for you specifically. Said if it's not you, she'll leave." Daniel's brow lifted, but he wiped his hands, removed his apron, and made his way to the private dining room. Veronica sat in the same place as before, impeccably dressed posture. Regal, yet her eyes carried a new kind of tension. "You asked for me," Daniel said, stopping a respectful distance away. "I have questions," she replied, studying him like a scientist examining an unfamiliar element. "Did she ever forgive you?" Daniel blinked. "Who? Whoever it was you couldn't save." The words cut deep, but he kept his voice steady. "She didn't need to. She saved herself. I just held the light long enough for her to find the door." Veronica looked away, her jaw tightening. "What happens if I try and I can't?" "Then we try again," Daniel said. "And if I fall, it'll be there. And if I hate you for what you uncover," he smiled faintly, "it'll still be there." For a long moment, Veronica was silent, the weight of his words settling around her. Then, for the first time in 5 years, she whispered the most terrifying word of her life. "Okay, let's begin." The next morning, Daniel arrived at her penthouse carrying a duffel of modest tools, resistance bands, a hand mirror, a rolled towel, and an old worn notebook. "What's that?" Veronica asked. "My wife's journal," he said, running his fingers over the cover. "Every inch of her journey is in here. Every setback, every win." She hesitated, then met his gaze. "Did she make it through?" "She did," Daniel said softly. "And she lived the rest of her life standing." Veronica looked at the mat on the floor. For the first time, she wheeled herself closer. The first session began with rules. Veronica's voice was crisp, her eyes sharp. "Rule 1, you don't touch me without permission." "Of course," Daniel replied. "Rule 2, no pity. I don't do pity, wouldn't dream of it. And Rule 3, if I say stop, you stop. Fair enough." Daniel knelt by the mat, unzipping his duffel. As he laid out the resistance bands and towel, he opened the worn notebook. "I thought this might help," he said. "My wife wrote about every moment, how she felt what she feared, what kept her going. Maybe it'll remind you you're not alone in this." Veronica eyed it warily. "And she made it." "She did," Daniel said, his tone soft. "And when she did, she walked straight into a jungle clinic because that's who she was. She died there, but not in a chair, and not with fear in her heart." The room fell silent. Then Daniel said gently, "Close your eyes. Just breathe." "I didn't sign up for meditation," she muttered. "No," he replied, "but your body forgot what safety feels like. Breathing reminds it." She gave him a long look, but obeyed. In the stillness, Daniel noticed the tiny twitches in her toes when sunlight reached her knees, the cracks in the armor she had built around herself. Later that evening, after he'd left, Veronica sat alone in the quiet house. It didn't feel lighter or warmer, just different. She rolled past shelves of untouched books, her gaze landing on a dusty violin case from her college days. For a moment, her hand hovered over it, but she pulled back. Too soon. Instead, she poured herself half a glass of bourbon, stared at it, and pushed it away. "You're changing," she murmured. The next session, Daniel noticed, Shed abandoned the blazer and heels. No armor, just a white t-shirt and yoga pants. He didn't comment, but he knew. Something had shifted. Daniel began the morning with the same calm tone, but Veronica was already sharper than usual. "You're 5 minutes late," she said, her voice slicing through the air. "Traffic," he replied evenly. "This is a private residence, not a bus stop. Would it make you feel better if I apologized?" he asked. "No, it would make me feel better if you respected my time." Daniel set his bag down and unrolled the mat without another word. "So sarcasm or stretching. I'm not here to be mocked. And I'm not here to be managed," he countered. "Maybe we can agree to remember why we're doing this." The session began quietly, small, deliberate movements that seemed almost laughable to a woman used to controlling boardrooms. "Flex your toes," he instructed. "I am. No, you're trying. Trying and doing are not the same." She glared. "Remind me why I let a janitor insult me 3 times a week. Because I'm the only one in your world who tells you the truth." Her lips twitched, almost a smile, but the moment passed. Later, when he asked her to shift forward just 2 inches, she snapped. "I said no, I told you I can't." "That's not what your body said yesterday," he replied calmly. Breathing hard, Veronica finally asked, "Do you know what it feels like, to want something so badly and have your own body betray you?" "Yes," Daniel said softly. He told her about his wife's night terrors, her paralysis, her screams in the dark, and how it took time, patience, and truth to help her heal. Then he looked Veronica straight in the eye. "You're not broken. You're defending yourself. Your mind built a wall so high even you can't see over it, but that means you can take it down." For the first time in years, Veronica didn't argue. She just looked away, her fingers curling tight on the armrest, because deep down she knew he was right. That night, Veronica dreamed she was standing on the rooftop of her childhood home, the lavender sky stretching endlessly above her. Her father's laugh carried on the wind as he handed her a hammer to fix the old shingles. "You're strong, Ronnie," he told her. "You just forgot where you put it." She woke with tears on her cheeks, the words echoing in her chest. The next morning, Daniel arrived earlier than usual, only to find Veronica opening the door herself, no assistant, no chauffeur. She wore simple leggings and a cardigan, her hair pulled back in a loose knot. "Am I hallucinating, or did the Queen just answer her own door?" he teased. "Don't get used to it," she said, though a faint smile betrayed her defiance. When he asked if she wanted to work in the chair, she shook her head. "I thought we could try the floor today." "You sure no? But I'm tired of that chair pretending to be my throne." Daniel's voice softened. "That's the first step, choosing to dethrone the lie." Slowly, she shifted from the chair to the mat. Her movements were shaky, tense, but deliberate. Daniel stepped forward instinctively to steady her, but she lifted a hand. "Let me try first." He nodded and stepped back, watching as she lowered herself onto the mat under her own power for the first time in half a decade. When she lay flat, breathing shallow but steady, he asked, "What do you feel?" "Humiliation," she muttered, then, after a pause, "and tension in my back, my legs." "That's progress," he said. "Muscles that don't work don't hold tension." Veronica stared at the ceiling, her voice tight. "So you're saying I've been faking it all these years?" "No," Daniel replied firmly. "I'm saying your mind built a story and your body believed it. But you're not powerless, and that scares you more than the wheelchair." For a long moment she didn't respond, but in her silence, something unspoken passed between them, an unsteady but undeniable step toward reclaiming herself. The next morning, Veronica was already waiting on the mat when Daniel walked in. No assistant, no makeup, just her in simple shorts and a t-shirt. He raised an eyebrow. "You're early." "I had a nightmare," she said quietly. "I was walking, but no one noticed. Not one person. It was like I fought so hard to stand, but I was invisible." Daniel sat beside her. "What do you think it meant?" Her answer came without hesitation. I'm scared that when I finally walk again, it won't matter that I'll still feel alone. You won't, he said gently. How can you be so sure? Because the people who truly see you now aren't looking at your legs. Something softened in her eyes. Thank you for not looking away. That day's session was different. She pushed harder, focusing on each movement with an intensity Daniel hadn't seen before. When he placed a towel under her foot and told her to drag it inward, she clenched her jaw and the towel moved. Just a little, but it moved. Do it again, he said. She did. Again. Again. By the fourth try, her breath was ragged, her eyes wet. I didn't think I could. I did, Daniel replied simply. She looked at him, her expression raw and unmasked. I haven't felt my body fight for me in years. It's like it remembered me. That's because you finally gave it permission, he said. That night alone in her bedroom, Veronica opened a drawer and pulled out an old photographer and her father barefoot laughing paint on their clothes. She touched the image and whispered, I'm still in here. For the first time, she believed it. 2 days later, a message appeared on Veronica's phone from an unknown number. You think this makes you a hero? You're still a fraud. Some things don't deserve second chances. The words cut deeper than she expected, dragging her back into the shadows she'd fought so hard to leave. For 3 days, she didn't answer Daniel's calls or show up for therapy. She stayed in her townhouse, curtains drawn, phone face down, the weight of doubt pressing on her chest. On the 4th morning, the doorbell rang. When she opened it, Daniel stood there, hands in his pockets, eyes steady. Why are you here? She asked, voice brittle. Because I didn't come this far just to be part of your before and after picture, he said. Her gaze dropped. I'm terrified that all of this doesn't matter. You're afraid of the wrong thing, Daniel replied. You should be afraid of never trying again. They didn't do physical therapy that day. Instead, they sat on the floor facing each other, and Daniel read aloud from his late wife's journal a page that said, Today I felt a twitch. Just one. But it was mine. Veronica closed her eyes. I'm tired of being a symbol. Then stop being one, he said gently. Be a person instead. Sometimes the harshest voice we hear is the one inside our own head. But progress isn't about silencing that voice, it's about teaching it new words. You're more than your worst moment, and healing starts when you believe you're worth the effort. If this story moved, you share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us about a time you chose to try again, even when it hurt. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss stories that remind us, no matter how broken we feel, there's always a way forward.